Is ChromeOS Linux? Well, let me answer that by first saying that no operating system is Linux. Linux is a kernel. It can be used in an operating system. So, if the question is, does ChromeOS use Linux? Then yes. But is it Linux? Well, of course not. No operating system is. The same also goes for Android. As well, sometimes people have a difficulty understanding this concept. The people, they often like to say weird things, such as in terms that ChromeOS isn't real Linux or something similar about Android. There's this supposed concept of what to them qualifies as they say it as real Linux. But Linux is a kernel. It's nothing more and nothing less. So you can basically use that kernel to build all kinds of different operating systems. There is no one type of system that can be built with a kernel. It's pretty universal in the sense that you can build all kinds of different systems. So, what is this conception of that real operating system they talk of then? Well, generally it seems to be GNU Linux. But when talking about ChromeOS, what makes it something that doesn't qualify apparently? Well, actually I have no idea. I really don't understand their views on these issues. Because calling any operating system by the name of the kernel is stupid in the first place. Only idiots would do that. And of course, because it's such a stupid thing, it results in these weird, stupid scenarios where some operating systems which use the Linux kernel are supposedly not operating systems. They call them Linux operating systems, of course that's wrong, but supposedly some are, but some aren't. But why? Why make such an arbitrary distinction? That's very stupid. It's stupid because they use the stupid terminology of calling the operating systems by the name of the kernel. Well, the operating system is not called as the kernel. If you're using the GNU operating system and you're using Linux on it as the kernel, it can be called GNU plus Linux because it's the combination of the two. And Linux tends to be noteworthy enough to mention after the name of the operating system, which is GNU. So since GNU is the name, and Linux is worth mentioning because it is such a sizable contribution, then if you wanted to call the system by one name, it should be GNU. But to call the operating system by the name of the kernel is stupid. So, for those people who do call operating systems by the name of the kernel, they should absolutely call ChromeOS the same way. And Android. It's a stupid double standard to only say that GNU plus Linux should be called Linux and no other system should be called that. Like, how stupid is that? Why is GNU plus Linux called only Linux, but then when there is another operating system like Android, then that's supposedly not Linux anymore, despite using the Linux kernel? Like, what kind of brain-dead nonsense is this? One has to lack a few brain cells in the head or be blinded by some sort of political views not to see how stupid this is. I've already explained in earlier speeches various theories I may have as to why people call the operating systems by the wrong names. So I'm not getting into too much detail on that right now. In any case, one has to be stupid not to see that ChromeOS and Android, they are using the Linux kernel all the same. There's really no difference from the point of view of the kernel. They are using the same kernel, and if you want to call the system by the name of the kernel, then they are all Linux, if that's what you want to call them. So why should you make that? Of course, it's wrong to do so, but if you were to do so, you should call them all the same. Why should you pick one system as the proper system? Like, really, this just smells to me like those people really just don't want to say the GNU in the name. Like, why do all these exceptions exist? Just for GNU plus Linux. Just think about it for a moment. Is there not a politically inspired motive for such a thing? Like, just look at all these scenarios. No one ever calls Mac OS the XNU operating system. XNU is the name of the kernel of Mac OS. Nobody has ever called it by the name of the kernel. It only ever applies to the GNU plus Linux systems. But then, when there are other operating systems, like ChromeOS and Android, that they don't like these people for some reason. Well, actually, ChromeOS might even have some GNU software in it, so actually I don't even understand what's going on there. It's really bizarre. But there is a distinction. The ChromeOS doesn't really respect the user's freedom all that much, so that might be it. But in any case, especially in the case of the Android, it's really strange. Why does it only ever apply to the what they call the desktop? Why does it ever apply to that? Why does it only apply to that? That is strange.